Society doesn't have to live with the choices you make. You do. And if you end up with someone who doesn't respect you, who doesn't put in the effort, you're the one dealing with that reality, not the people telling you to compromise. Don't let society's noise convince you to lower your standards or ignore your worth. Hey ladies, welcome back to the channel. So today we're diving into something that gets tossed around way too often in dating, and it's this whole idea of high maintenance versus high standards. I know you've heard it before, and maybe you've been called high maintenance just because you don't settle for anything less than what you deserve. But let me tell you, having high standards, that's not a flaw. It's a strength. And I'm here to remind you that not every guy is worth putting on a pedestal. So here's the thing. Somewhere along the line, it became a bad thing for a woman to have standards, especially if those standards mean not putting up with half-hearted effort or inconsistency. It's almost like we're just supposed to be grateful for the bare minimum. A guy texts you back after days of silence, and we're supposed to think he's doing us a favor, or he decides to finally commit after months of purposely stringing you along, and suddenly he's a saint. Let's stop right there. Today I'm going to break down why having high standards doesn't make you difficult. It makes you clear about what you deserve. So let's talk about why having high standards even matters. So having standards is like setting a boundary, one that says, I know my worth and I won't settle for less. When you have high standards, you're not asking for perfection. You're asking for respect. You're saying that you deserve someone who meets you where you are, who brings just as much to the table as you do. And the funny thing, the people who usually have the biggest problem with high standards are the ones who don't want to meet them. Now, having high standards doesn't mean you're expecting someone to be flawless. Let's just be real. Nobody's perfect. Neither are you. And we're not looking for Mr. Perfect either. Standards are about the basics, like respect, honesty, and consistency. It's about knowing that you deserve someone who shows up, someone who makes an effort, not just when it's convenient, but because they genuinely want to be in your life. And if someone is unwilling to give you even that, why should you lower your standards just to keep them around? And let's be clear, standards protect us. They protect our peace, our happiness, and ultimately our self-worth. When you set a standard, you're setting a rule for yourself. You're saying that this is what I accept, nothing less. And that's powerful because it means you're not relying on someone else to validate you. You've already done that for yourself by saying, I'm worth more than scraps. I'm worth more than inconsistent effort. Now here's the kicker. Those who feel offended by your standards, they're often the ones who know they can't live up to them. They'll call you picky or high maintenance because they want you to lower the bar to make things easier for them. But the truth is, a person who's truly invested in you won't see your standards as obstacles. They'll see them as a call to step up. And if someone's not willing to step up, they're showing you exactly why they don't belong in your life. Now, let's address the idea of being high maintenance. Ladies, when did asking for basic decency, consistency, and respect make us high maintenance? The minute we say we want a man who values our time and effort, suddenly we're too demanding. But here's the reality. Anyone who's calling you high maintenance probably just doesn't want to put in the effort. It's easier for them to label you as difficult than to actually step up and meet your standards. Think about it. When a man hears that a woman has standards, he's got two choices. One, he can either rise to meet them, or two, he can choose to dismiss you by labeling you high maintenance. That label is just a lazy excuse. It's a way to deflect responsibility so he doesn't have to confront the fact that he's simply not willing to give you what you deserve. And here's the kicker. He knows deep down that any man who truly values you wouldn't stand for the half-hearted effort he's offering. So rather than make changes or level up, he'll just try to make her feel guilty for even having high standards in the first place. And let's break down this idea of being too demanding. Too demanding according to whom? You're demanding respect, stability, and a person who can be present in your life in a meaningful way. Last time I checked, those aren't luxury items. They're the foundation of any relationship worth having. And anyone who finds that to be too much to handle is doing you a favor by walking away, because they're showing you that they're not up for the task of meeting even the basics. So remember this. Having high standards isn't about being high maintenance. It's about knowing that you deserve a person who treats you well without you having to compromise on the things that matter the most. So don't let anyone tell you that that's asking for too much, because the right person won't be intimidated by your standards. They will appreciate them. All right, so here's an analogy for you. So think of dating like a job interview. Imagine a company putting out a job listing that says they want someone reliable, responsible, and willing to grow with the company. But instead, they get a bunch of applicants who show up late, give half-hearted answers, and expect the company to just hand them the job. In that scenario, is the company high maintenance for not hiring them? No. The company just knows what it's looking for and it's willing to wait for the right person to come along. And let's take this analogy a step further. When the company finally does hire someone who meets those requirements, that person feels valued because they know they earned it. They know they're there because they bring something to the table. And this is exactly what happens in dating when you have high standards, or just standards, period. When someone actually meets your standards, they're coming in knowing that they're there because they put in the work and because they genuinely respect what you're bringing into their life. And guess what? That kind of mutual respect creates a bond that's so much stronger than just accepting the first person who shows interest. So think of yourself as that company. You're not about to hand out the role of partner to just anyone who applies. You're going to wait for the person who shows up ready, willing, and able to give you what you need. And if someone feels that that's too much, that's not your problem. That's their issue with not being able to meet that standard. And trust me, waiting for the right fit is always better than hiring the first applicant who shows up just because you're tired of being alone. So here's where the power of saying no comes in. Not every person who shows interest deserves a spot in your life. And yes, there will be people who don't understand this, who think you're being picky or stubborn, but standing by your standards means protecting your energy, your time, and your heart from anyone who isn't willing to fully show up in your life. Saying no is a boundary within itself. It's recognizing that not everyone who shows up in your life is meant to stay. When you can confidently say no to someone who isn't meeting your standards, you're telling yourself that you're okay with waiting. You're okay with being on your own for as long as it takes, because you know that the person who's truly for you won't need you to compromise on what matters. And here's the beauty of it. Saying no to what isn't right opens up space for what is. When you're clear about what you will and what you won't accept, you attract people who align with that. And yes, there might be times when saying no feels tough, like you're giving up on something that could have been good enough. But don't settle for good enough. Your standards are there to guide you towards something great, something that doesn't require you to shrink or to bend to make someone else comfortable. So embrace that power. Don't let anyone make you feel bad for being selective, for saying no, or for knowing that you're worth waiting for. Because at the end of the day, high standards aren't a barrier. They're a filter to make sure that only the people who truly respect and value you make it through. And let me address something for the critics out there who think this is about playing hard to get or being too independent. This isn't about making things difficult for the sake of it. It's about creating a life where you're only surrounded by people who see your worth and aren't intimidated by it. A man who truly wants to be with you won't see your standards as a burden. He'll see them as a challenge to become the best version of himself. And that's the kind of energy you want in your life. You know, it's funny because some people will call you difficult or unrealistic just because you have a backbone and you know what you want and what you stand for. They'll say, well, why can't you just go with the flow? Or relationships are about compromise. And sure, relationships do involve compromise, but compromise doesn't mean sacrificing your self-worth or pretending that you're okay with being treated any kind of way. Compromise is about finding middle ground, not giving up ground completely. And if someone thinks that's asking for too much, maybe they're just not used to seeing someone who truly respects themselves. And that's not hard to believe these days. Here's the real truth about being labeled difficult. When someone calls you difficult, it's usually because they can't get away with the bare minimum. They realize that you're not going to put up with half-hearted effort or excuses. And instead of stepping up, they'd rather make you feel like you're the problem. But that's not your burden to carry. It's not your job to shrink or become smaller just to make someone else feel big. When you keep your standards high, you're saying, I deserve someone who's willing to show up for me the way that I will show up for them. So the next time someone says you're being too independent or hard to please, take it as a compliment. It means you know exactly who you are and you're not willing to hand over your time, energy, or your heart to someone who won't appreciate it. And the people who understand this, those are the ones who will respect you even more for it. Being true to yourself doesn't make you difficult. It makes you powerful. You know, it's wild to think about how in 2024, having high standards has become so shocking. We live in a society where saying, I know my worth and I refuse to settle is somehow seen as asking for too much. There's this underlying message, especially for women, that you should just take what you can get because the pickings are slim or good men are rare. But here's the problem with that mindset. It convinces people to lower their standards and settle for less than they deserve. And that's exactly how so many end up in situationships and toxic relationships or with partners who don't value them. Society loves to talk about empowerment and self-worth and knowing what you deserve. But the moment you actually put that into practice, people start calling you unrealistic or picky. There's this expectation that because times have changed, we should just be grateful for the bare minimum. People will even say things like, it's better to have someone than to be alone. But have y'all ever been with someone and still felt alone? That's even worse. And that mindset is exactly why so many feel stuck and they're unfulfilled, like they're given everything while barely getting anything in return. And settling is a trap that keeps you from the life and the love you truly deserve. And yes, the pressure is real. People around you, your friends, your family, society as a whole, might make you feel like you're holding out for something that doesn't exist, like having standards is some kind of fantasy. But let's be clear. Knowing your worth and refusing to settle isn't about being unrealistic. It's about refusing to compromise on the things that genuinely matter, like respect, consistency, and loyalty. Now, I know some people will hear this message and the first thing that comes to mind is money. Like it's all about finances or a tit for tat exchanges. But that's not what we're talking about. It's about respect, consistency, loyalty. Yes, finances and other things can be very important components in a relationship. But the foundation of a relationship can't be bought. The unbreakable foundation is built on things that money can't buy. Things that define true character and connection. So when you feel the pressure to settle, I want you to remember this. Society doesn't have to live with the choices you make. You do. And if you end up with someone who doesn't respect you, who doesn't put in the effort, you're the one dealing with that reality, not the people telling you to compromise. Don't let society's noise convince you to lower your standards or ignore your worth. You deserve to create a life and a relationship that aligns with who you are and what you truly want, no matter what anyone else has to say about it. Here's the reality. Not every guy deserves to be put on a pedestal. You don't owe anyone praise just because he shows up and does the bare minimum. If he's not meeting your standards, he's just not the one. Putting someone on a pedestal only gives them room to look down on you. And you, with your standards, don't need to be looked down on by anyone. Stand firm, keep those standards high, and know that you're not going to miss out on anything by waiting for what's right. Now, let's break down this pedestal thing a bit. So putting someone on a pedestal can be easy to do, especially if he's saying all the right things or treating you well at first. But here's the thing. Just because someone treats you decently doesn't mean he deserves to be put above you. A man who's truly worthy of your time will want to be on equal ground with you, not towering above you. He won't need to be worshipped. He'll want to be respected, and he'll respect you just as much. When you put someone on a pedestal, you give them control over your sense of worth. You start thinking, wow, he's so amazing. I hope he chooses me. But let's flip that. You're just as valuable. It's not about hoping that he picks you. It's about deciding if he's worthy of being in your life. When you stop putting people on pedestals, you're reminding yourself that love isn't about one person having more value or more power. It's about partnership. It's about two people seeing eye to eye. If he's not willing to meet you at that level, he's not the one. No man deserves to be held up as some prize or goal that you need to earn or chase, because real love, it's not about being put on a pedestal or putting someone else there. It's about finding and attracting someone who stands next to you, shoulder to shoulder, and says, let's do this together. So let's stop putting anybody above us or below us and start looking for someone who values equality, partnership, and mutual respect. So my takeaway for you today is simple. High standards don't make you high maintenance. They make you strong. They make you clear, and they make you someone who doesn't settle. Don't ever let anyone convince you that your standards are the problem. Keep those standards up, Hold your head high, back straight, and remember you deserve the same respect and effort and love that you give. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up, subscribe for more, and let me know in the comments, have you ever been called high maintenance or difficult and all those things just for having high standards? Let's talk about it, and until next time, don't put anyone on a pedestal who doesn't deserve it, and keep those standards high, and stay strong. Thank y'all so much for watching, and I will see y'all in the next one. Love y'all. Bye.